History of Modern Philosophy and the Philosophy of the Mind.
Thanks, V, for inviting me to do this. I thought, why did she invite me to do this? I don't know what I'm going to say. So I did actually think a bit about what would a philosopher have to say in particular about, especially me, about this topic, so this topic of AI and employment. And so I'm going to riff on some things that have already been touched on by other people. First question is, why is AI special when we're talking about technology broadly and employment, right? So why talk about AI and employment other than the contingent fact that we thought we could pack a room with people, right? Specific people from engineering and computer science. Why isn't it just technology generally or automation generally? Automation has been a problem since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. So the idea that technology is going to replace jobs or workers has been around for a long time. Is there something especially interesting about the relationship between emerging technology and artificial intelligence and employment? And I think that the worry, which has already been mentioned, is something like this. It's not the worry that certain sectors of the either local or global economy are going to change. That happens all the time. That's part of what capitalism is. So there's a phrase for it, creative destruction. This was this phrase Joseph Schumpeter popularized. And if you think about it, a little over 100 years ago, a little over 80% of the people who lived in the United States were agricultural workers of some kind. Now it's less than 2%. And one of the reasons why there's been that massive change is because of technology. Right? So this idea that technology will radically change entire sectors of the economy and with it the nation states of which it's a part, that's been around for a long time. So is there something particularly interesting about what AI is going to do? And I think that to the extent that there's like a special challenge AI poses, it's this challenge of the fact that it's not just that AI might eliminate workers in the sense of eliminating specific jobs or eliminating specific sectors. It's the idea that AI is going to eliminate work, right? So we're no longer getting rid of workers, we're getting rid of whole classes of possible work for people to do. And then you have to figure out what to do with the people. And if you can't figure that out, you get things like massive social unrest. You don't necessarily just get war. So the Arab Spring was thought to be partially driven by the fact that there were significant numbers of young men who didn't have jobs. And you might have various views about the Arab Spring, but for the most part, much of it was good. But it can also lead to things like war. So, one thing to ask then is it bad if we don't have work? If the total amount of production maybe continues to increase because AI makes us ever more efficient, but the actual amount of work that we have to do decreases. So there are fewer things for you to do in your day that modern capitalist economies think of as work. And is that going to be so bad? Well, one thought is people need to eat, people need to clothe and feed themselves and have somewhere to live. So you would need to come up with some sort of political and economically feasible solution to just that basic fact. But we have to do that anyway, because most developed nations have significant, the United States in particular, have significant poverty, and it's ever increasing, and there's this question, what are those people going to do? So we're already dealing with that issue. I don't think that AI is going to make that any different, especially if the continued amount of productive efficiency increases. So I guess there's this other worry is that people need to work, which was just mentioned. Now, that seems right in a way, but it's not like people need to work in the sense that people need to be able to work 70 hours a week amongst 3 low-paying jobs that engage in drudge work for no health benefits and no intellectual challenge, right? So to the extent that people need to work, it seems to be something like people need things with which they can develop their talents and exercise the kinds of cognitive capacities that make us human beings and develop those capacities in ever greater ways as we work. So there aren't that many jobs today that really allow us all to do that anyway. So there's just this further challenge of figuring out whether we can come up with such jobs if AI is slowly eating away at many of the what you might think of as the entry level or less skilled jobs. And if you're thinking, I'm fine, I'm in computer science or engineering, I'm a programmer, I'm going to be building the AIs, never to replace me. Sorry, that's not true. So we already have AI that can code. I mean, if you've ever used a code linter, you're already depending on a computer to tell you whether you have syntax errors in the programs you're writing. That's going to get ever more sophisticated. There's going to be an increasing thing where you're just having fewer actual software engineers because one software engineer with an AI assistant can do more than 5. And eventually you just won't need many software engineers at all, right? So this idea that there are skilled jobs where we're building the machines that are going to do things to, maybe bad things to the rest of humanity's jobs, well, they're going to, if it's going to be bad, it's going to be bad, I think, for basically everybody. But let's say we solve the job problem, or let's say it turns out that we solve it by laws, and so there aren't as many computers undermining us. Are there any other ways in which AI work presents some sort of special challenge? And I think that other than sort of issues about what it is to be a human being and watching that slowly creeping up at you in this artificial way, which might be disturbing, but we can talk more than that, there's this especially weird fact about AI, and this is more based on the fact that machine learning is now driving a lot of the technological advancements. It's that we don't understand why the computers end up being so accurate or effective in the decisions that they make. You design a certain set of algorithms that start out with certain weights of probability. You run a bunch of information through it, and then eventually, 2 days, 3 days, so it only took the computer, it was Google who built the Go AI engine, right? Yeah. So after the first one won a championship, they used another one, which they started from scratch and didn't run any human games through it, just let it play itself after it learned the rules, and after 3 days, it was better than anything anybody could understand. And its moves were ones that Go players of the game Go, did not understand. It just seemed inscrutable why one would open a game in the way that the AI would open it, right? So there's this sort of inscrutability to the verdicts that are delivered by these black box neural networks. And as those become increasingly effective, as they surely will, predicting cancer, predicting, say, criminal behavior, whatever it is, we're going to be relying on verdicts from machines whose operation we really don't understand. So there's an old Isaac Asimov story that reads kind of clunkily. It's called Franchise, mid-50s. And Asimov's version of the future, maybe Asimov is like Terminator and people haven't heard of it. He was a prominent science fiction author. All right. But Asimov wrote this story where in the United States in the future, one person votes, and that determines how all offices are selected. But they vote in the sense that they are interviewed by a computer, which has studied the operations of the society over the last few years, figures out basically what's going to happen, but needs a little bit more data, interviews one human being selected to a certain extent at random, and then from just sort of random information that it asks about that human being, figures out how everybody should be distributed in office. So you still have a nominal democracy. There's this sort of representative structure to society, but it's supposed to be hyper, rational in the sense that, oh, we've got this computer that's just really reliable at outputting these verdicts. But nobody understands how it arrives at the verdicts that it does. Right? And so there's this, I think, unease with this idea that you're putting in your hands in the fate of or in the sort of operations of this intelligence that you don't really understand the operations of. And to the extent that you can understand those operations, it will be a less efficient predictor of whatever it is you're trying to tell it to do. So when people sell these neural nets to companies now, they give them these options of saying things like, do you want the network that works according to certain classical rules of computation we can clearly articulate so you can understand why you're getting the verdicts that you are? Or do you want just it to be hyper reliable? Which do you want? You can't have both. And as we elect more towards the hyper reliability, so we're going to be unable to fully understand why we're doing the things we're doing. And I think that's a disturbing thing. But time's short, so thanks very much.
Okay, for the next section, I'd like to invite all 4 speakers up to the front, and we are going to have a roundtable discussion between them. So I will be asking various questions that relate to what they were speaking on, and all of them will have an option, have the opportunity to respond to each other, give their opinions, kind of discuss, because we have lots of different ideas about artificial intelligence. Is it good, is it bad? Should we be afraid of it? So first of all,